All right, we're going to look in this section at Chapter 2 of Norm Geisler's book, Christian Ethics, Options, and Issues. And Norm's going to look at antinomianism. Again, antinomianism is the idea that it is against law, holds that there are no binding, moral, absolute laws, that everything is relative to the situation, relative to the culture. And in antinomianism, we see some basic beliefs of antinomianism. First of all, it says that there are no God-given moral laws. Antinomianism would not believe or accept any kind of absolute revelation from God. Secondly, they would say there are no objective moral laws. There is no law of nature, law of culture, law of society that is so objective that it can be applied in each and every situation. It would also teach that there are no timeless moral laws, that you have to adapt, that you have to evolve, that you have to be able to make adjustments depending upon the situations that are going on in culture or in times of peace versus times of war. The fourth thing that antinomianism would say is that there are no laws against laws. You just can't be making up laws to say you can't have certain kinds of laws. And this would be very difficult in an orderly society where you do have to set up laws. You would have complete anarchy and chaos. Now, some would see some positive contributions of antinomianism. Something I suppose that you could say good is that antinomianism stresses individual responsibility and accountability. That each individual is to develop an ethic, develop something of ultimate value with their personal responsibility. They would also say that it recognizes an emotional or an emotive element to it, that people are different, that people have different emotional or moral responsibilities. And so thou shalt not for one person is going to be different than thou shalt not for another person. Another thing is it stresses personal relationships. Some forms of antinomianism, like existentialism, stress personal relationships and being sensitive to someone else, sensitive to their moral conscience or sensitive to their cultural background. The last one is that it stresses the finite dimensions of ethics, that there is a need to be sensitive to different situations, that you cannot just, like a mathematical formula, slap a law on something and not understand the dynamic attitudes, the dynamic motivations, the end result of something without looking at its complete analysis. Well, what are some of the criticisms of antinomianism in general? First of all, it is very self-defeating. It is self-defeating in that it says that there are no absolutes, and by that it is establishing an absolute. The denial of moral value is very self-destructive. One cannot deny all value without presupposing some value. You cannot say there are no absolutes without establishing some kind of absolute. Secondly, it's too subjective. Everyone does that which is right in their own eyes. The understanding, for instance, of love varies from person to person. How they define love, how they give love, how they receive love. Antinomianism is too individualistic. It doesn't think of society as a whole. It is very ineffective, antinomianism, because you are constantly fighting against things rather than fighting for things. You are constantly trying to tear down moral values or moral laws, suggesting that there cannot be any. So that individualism becomes very ineffective. And antinomianism is also irrational. It does not make peace with such laws of rationality as like the law of non-contradiction. It makes no sense to say everything is right for people to do, even when there are two things that are exact opposites. If love is right for one person, hate cannot be right for another person. If kindness to children is right in one culture, then cruelty to those children cannot be right in another. You have these conflicting values. They both can't be right. And so it is self-defeating. So people who live by antinomianism will find themselves in chaos, in conflict, and ultimately in self-destruction and